Hello, everyone. I'm Allison. Thank you for joining me for Where I'm From 100. Woohoo! If I had a party hat, I would be wearing it in like a little noisemaker, but I don't. So it's just woohoo! Number 100. Thank you for everyone who has been on this journey with me, everyone who's participated and watched and commented. And it's been wonderful and joyous. And I'm really excited about my special guest today, who is my husband. Like the perfect fit because we've been through many things together, but we are from different places. And here he is.
Hello. That was quick. I
Hello.
didn't think it was going to work that well.
It works that well. Welcome.
Thank you. Maybe it's because we're on the same internet.
Welcome to the other room you're not in.
Yeah, it's
Um,
cool.
Hello, everyone who's joining us. Lovely to not see you, but see your name. It's good to see you, Cody, even though I just saw you 3 minutes ago.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, thanks, Jeremy.
it is a beautiful mug. And he just got a haircut. So he looks really top
Spiffed up.
notch,
Spiffed up.
right?
You look very nice too.
Thank you. Take a shower. Um, I don't always do that. So is there anything you would like to say, Cody,
Oh, well, I just
before you
wanted
share
to,
your poem?
yeah, yes, I did think something I wanted to say. I want to say congratulations on 100 Where I'm From poems. It's pretty amazing. It's been interesting watching from, a very unique vantage point, this like whole kind of phenomenon develop with all these poems. And, it's like kind of cool that people have come together and there's more to come.
That's
So
right.
congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And I'm very excited to be a part of it at this auspicious moment right now, where I'm from 100.
All right.
Do you
Let's
have
go.
anything to say before I read my poem?
As always, thank you for your love and support.
All right. Okay, so I'll start my poem.
All right.
Here we go. Where I'm from. I am from bike pedals, from G.I. Joe and Cobra. I'm from the trash barrels in the pasture, rusted, red, orange. They'd turn to dust at your touch. I am from the hanging ivy, whose leaves I would pass through and imagine a jungle. I am from tamales and shrimp on Christmas Eve and late night conversations. I am from the Sheltons and the Holzapples, but don't forget the Deans and the Moons. I am from Look You in the Eye and also, maybe not, from Do As I Say and Not As I Do. I'm from Youth Club on Wednesdays and Acolyte Sundays, but only for a little while. I'm from Paris, the one in Texas, not in France, and divorce, chicken fried steak, and fried okra. I'm from my grandfather who lost most of his lung to polio, my other grandfather who was a general's aide during World War II, from Grami's garden, and hugs so tight they could protect you from anything. The determination in my mother's eyes and the fragility of my father's heart. I am from the things ripped apart. But mostly, I am from the boy riding his bike through streets, over ditches, and into vacant lots, pedaling and seeking and finding. That is my poem.
I cried just a little.
You did well.
uh, Obviously, I know a lot about where you're from. I thought it was beautiful, and you are always seeking and finding. I would agree. And where was the ivy?
Well, I mean, when I lived in Alice, like after my parents were divorced, still with my mom, we had like those hanging plants, just those house
Oh,
plants
okay.
that would hang in this little courtyard, and could go out in this little courtyard with like terrazzo tile
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and there would be these ivies hanging, around, and I could play around in those. As if I was probably like a GI Joe or something. So those were something that I just kind of came to mind while I was doing the prompt. It was interesting. The prompt, is is cool because it makes you sort of think about
Mm-hmm.
those specific things, some specific things in your, what made you who you are. And so found that very interesting.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. What was your experience? That's the question.
Is that the
That's always
question?
that's the question. What was your experience writing this, and were you surprised? Because you said you'd been thinking about it for a while. Because we knew you were
Yeah.
going to join me at some point, and then it just kind of became clear that 100 was the time because it's a special number and you're special.
Yes. Well, thank you. And and I thought, well, okay, here's the experience, right? So I wrote that line about the first line about the bike
Yes.
pedals, and I just was like, okay, that seemed right for some reason, and I hadn't thought about that at all ahead of time
Mm-hmm.
until I started working on the poem, in earnest, and um, and for some reason that idea came back at the end,
Yeah, that was
and it just felt right. Like I didn't really mean for that to be. I wasn't like trying to button it up or make it sort of, like this
come full
thing, like
circle.
a full circle thing or whatever. Um, it just kind of happened that way, and I thought, well, is that cheesy? I was like, it's okay. I think it's okay. We'll go with
I thought
that.
it was lovely.
Um,
If it was cheesy,
yeah,
it was cheesy just the right amount. It's
yeah.
just the right amount of parmesan on the pasta.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I almost added a little more at the end and I decided not to. So I was like, let's take this cheese out and leave that cheese in and just the right amount.
I thought it was just the right amount. If you
Okay.
rewatched it at the end, you'll see a tear dropping right at the cheese.
Aw.
So, ding. Um, and I thought I was very impressed um, how much you got in there
Mm.
and not that many words. Like that, you touched on a lot of things because it's always interesting to me as the observer, especially if people I already know what they're going to include. I never know. Like they might include things that you know that I do know and other things, but you included a lot.
Mm.
It's hinted at, you know.
Yeah, it's hinted at. There's a lot of things that aren't like explicitly pointed out, but you know, the big thing that kind of like the theme that kind of was coming through it is that I was sort of from things that kind of fell apart or broke apart.
Yeah.
You know, not like just kind of in a way like that of life, right? My
Yeah.
parents were divorced, and my dad passed away, and even my relatives, had things like my grandfather's lung, and being in the war, and there were things that sort of happened in my family history that were kind of, and I think most people's,
Yeah.
but and so it sort of came back and I was like, oh, I'm from divorce. Like, and that's the thing. I am from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a distinctive thing that I'm from. And in some ways, even, and I would always like, since my father died when I was 13, as you know. But I think since knowing, I think since that happened, a lot of my, like personal, like the way I kind of thought of myself was as someone whose father died when they were 13, right? That was a
Yeah.
specific touchstone or
Yeah.
important event in my life that affected me obviously very deeply. But I think that the divorce part, which happened when I was 5, was actually maybe an even more seminal moment. I mean, I don't know if that's whatever. I don't want to like
It's
rank
good.
these
We
things, but, but
seminal moment face off.
right. But as
Divorce
far as where I'm from,
versus
the
I know.
idea of those things coming apart,
Yeah.
like these families coming apart,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I wanted to include in the poem the Deans and the Moons and the Sheltons and the Holzapples, because I'm sort of from all of that. And I think sometimes the Deans and the Moons can get forgotten, but they were part of that too. And those things that came together also got kind of pulled apart. And and then maybe put back together, and like the kind of, I left that as sort of open-ended, but the idea is like, do those things come back together as a person? Am I able to to kind of try to bring in my things in my life
Yeah.
together, or hold them together, and not specifically anything, but every different things, many things.
Yeah. I got all
Peace.
that. I thought the
Yeah.
rusted out, as a person I think who's been to the place where these rusted out barrels are,
Mm-hmm.
that was
Yes.
very
The farm.
evocative of the farm. Yeah. And that that sort of disintegration, or that things are not what they appear. because it
Hmm.
it looks solid and whole, but if you touch it, it falls apart. And I think for a lot of us, there's family stories or myths, and then if you get too close, they don't really hold together
Yeah.
cohesively. And I think your poem speaks to that. And it is interesting thinking about divorce because it certainly was. I mean, I don't remember my parents really being together, so I
Hmm.
think in a lot of ways, I just never have given it maybe space. Plus, I didn't want them to be together. I think
Right.
you know,
Right.
you had a similar, it's not like we were the ones in the corner, like, oh, I hope they get back together. It's like, no, that's not, nope, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think we had that connection that I think when we
Yeah,
first met, we started talking to each other about um, our personal histories, where we're from,
that's right.
basically,
We did.
and some of those things, some of that we talked about were our
Death
backgrounds
and
with
divorce
divorce,
and death
and
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 death.
death,
I mean, one of the
yeah,
first
and death.
conversations, I mean, really, the first conversation I think we ever had of any substance, we talked about your father dying when you were 13 and my brother dying when I was 10 and how it changes you forever.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we had a deep conversation, multiple deep conversations about that,
Yeah.
about those experiences, and so I thought they were definitely part of where I'm from.
Yeah.
Um, Back, just to follow up on the thing you said about the barrels, like those trash barrels that are in West
Yeah.
Texas, that over the years they get rusted out, and eventually they really do disintegrate,
Yeah.
and at the touch they will turn to almost like sand, like a rough sand, but also they're jagged and kind of like scary. There's like
Yes.
this, and as for a little kid, basically from where I was from, going out to that place, the farm as we called it, but it's more like a piece of property.
There's
Um,
no farming
there's
happening.
no farming. And
It's
once upon a time, it was a secret farm
mm,
when farming was illegal in that
okay.
area.
Yeah.
You couldn't farm without a license, and my great grandfather farmed illegally in back far into the pasture where you couldn't find where you couldn't see it from the road. Like,
What
yeah, there's
what
a secret field back there.
what did
Yeah,
he farm there? I
corn,
mean, it's tricky.
corn,
Okay.
okra, and yeah, it's so hot, right? So, but
Yeah.
and any like those kind of hot crops. And so, yeah, back there, way back in the pasture, I think we walked to it, you and
Yeah.
I. One time we visited that one time.
Oh, the
And I think right when we
bugs.
got to the secret field is when we saw that black widow,
Yeah.
like just sitting right in the
Uh-huh.
pathway,
Yeah.
which was kind of like, hey, this black widow's saying turn around,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
the biggest
And
one I've
so,
ever seen. And I'm
yeah.
not even a person who's afraid of spiders, but it
Yeah.
was like
I mean, at least
I,
we thought it was a black widow. I mean, maybe it was
it
just an
was
orb spider, but at the time
scared
it was
us.
a scary looking spider. So we
It scared
turned
us.
around and left. Yeah, I mean, it was getting a little bit kind of out. At that point, we're getting kind of far into the field or the pasture, and so far enough that it felt like it was time to turn back. But yeah, I always thought that story was fascinating. There was like a secret,
That is.
basically like a secret garden or a secret farm,
Hmm.
and that's why that place was called the
That's why it
farm,
was called the farm.
even
Okay.
though it wasn't actually a real farm, like
I probably knew that somewhere
it was
back,
an illegal farm.
but I
Yeah.
haven't heard it in a long time. That's really fascinating. That
Mm.
part of because there was such an emotional attachment to that land,
Yeah.
and that
Oh, for
makes it make
sure.
more sense
It
to
had a
me.
very indelible impression on me.
Mm-hmm.
And then those trash barrels were closer to the house, which was a mobile home. But then
Mm-hmm.
and they would have those kind of jagged things,
Yeah.
and if you touched them, they would, like I said, dissolve into dust. And you think of that as like sometimes these things we think are permanent. They're very like robust, you know, things, and those barrels were at one point, and there was other farm equipment out there that was the same way, just completely rusted out. And
Yes.
then unless you kind of go out somewhere or you're like going to a farmer's market or something like out in the country a little bit, you won't see like a full plow, like a plow or like a full piece of farm equipment that from
Right.
earlier last century, in the 1920s, or whatever, or even earlier, the 19 teens, this just rusted and just that orange color, that deep orange brown color, red, of things. It was just like a bunch of that stuff out there. So,
Yeah.
I chose the barrels, but because they were the thing I had the most experience with. But those other things, like there's like a small tractor out there and things like that. I don't know if that's still out there. I haven't been there in many years, but
It's been a long
probably.
time.
I would guess it's probably still
Probably.
there.
I
It's
don't
too
think
hard to
that
take
stuff
it.
gets hauled away.
Why would you haul it away? There's
Yeah.
no point. But yeah. Well, awesome. So.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share or say? I'm trying to think of. I thought it was interesting how you touched on your father's death very gently.
Yeah,
His fragile heart
yeah.
could have meant
His
many
fragile heart.
things, and I didn't
Yeah,
know if you were going to explicitly state it in our conversation, but it meant.
yeah. And I because I thought, being where I'm from, and both of my parents are where I'm from,
Yeah.
and I think that my mother's a very determined person, and I think my father, I wouldn't think of him as fragile
Mm.
at all, but I think his heart was, and like and I thought it was an interesting way to sort of put it in there, because he was 42 and he had a major heart attack and died, and I think that no one would have known how fragile his heart was. Um, that that would just like that happened. I was like, and I don't think he seemed fragile, but his heart was fragile, and and it's like kind of like admitting that, or like writing that
Mm-hmm.
down and saying, well, that was his real physical heart, not like a metaphorical
Right.
heart, which
Right.
which may have also been fragile in ways too. Whatever, that's for a different poem. But I think that his physical heart, being that it failed on him,
Yeah.
was
Spectacularly,
yeah
you know.
was not sturdy in that way, ultimately. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was in there. I wasn't, I sort of just kind of went with it. I did the two grandfathers thing. I didn't know if they were necessary or not, but I just sort of wanted a little bit about them in there. And I didn't include my other grandmother. I didn't have anything really clear to say in in this poem about her. She's obviously important to me. But I sort of felt like those people were kind of where I'm from, and yeah, I'm from those things, objects like the GI Joe and the phrases or the like sayings that people have said and the places but ultimately, I was like, well, I'm from these people that like ultimately, when it comes down to it, yeah, those things are all important and they are part of who I am, like those
Sure. You're still
objects.
trying to
And
get somebody to watch G.I. Joe.
I'm still trying to get someone to watch GI Joe with me. But and that's cool. But I could have said Garbage Pail Kids, and it would have been just as relevant.
I don't know.
I could have
Not
said
as
Sony
relevant.
Walkman. I could have said,
Mm-hmm.
I could have said, other things,
But you
BMX
can't.
bikes, whatever. But like those things, for some reason, GI Joe and Cobra seemed like, oh, I remember having like I remember having Storm
Right.
Shadow and Snake Eyes, and I remember having Stalker, and one of my friends had a Cobra Commander, and it was one of those that had been played with so much that you picked it up and its legs would just swing back and forth from like the pelvis area, and like there's something about it being well used, like a well used toy
Yeah.
has this a meaning to it, and I think as we know, the Barbie movies is a huge sensation, right? Those
But it
well-used
was
toys can
so
really stick with
well
us.
handled in that movie. I mean, I was thinking about it, and I've mentioned it to other people as a person who did do some things to her Barbies that they might not have appreciated. It was nice to see that portrayed.
Right.
We did play hard
Yeah.
with toys we loved.
Yes. We used to put firecrackers in the GI Joes sometimes, and you blow them up. But I only did that with a very small number because they were too important.
Yeah.
Because then you lost the Scout or Gung
Yeah.
Ho with the bazooka. What are
Yeah.
you gonna do if you have Gung Ho with the bazooka?
I never blew up a Barbie. I think I just,
Yeah.
overdid it with her hair and her makeup, and it just starts to get kind of ratty. I never did the whole like ink pen on the face. That was next level on Barbie. But
Wouldn't it be interesting to see a movie about GI Joe where GI Joe got blown up but by a firecracker instead of?
I don't think you're the only one who did that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure not.
So yeah. Anything
Awesome.
else? This has
I
been
think,
wonderful.
yeah.
I don't know. It's just fun for me to talk to you. And it also is a form of time travel for me because Pop and Grammy were important to me in my life. And Grammy's hugs, that's probably where I started to cry. Although Pop's hugs were also very tight. They were
Yes.
tight,
It's very tight
tight
huggers.
huggers. And
Both my grandparents.
it is, I'm today years old when I figured out that's where you get it from.
Mm. Well, now you know. See
And it
something new.
seems
You
like
learn
I
something new,
probably
even now after
should
20
have
years. You can learn
figured
something
it
new.
out before now.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh yeah, that's like, I feel like I'm getting a chiropractic adjustment from them.
Fair,
And
fair enough.
even
Fair
even
enough.
when they were like 87 years old,
Yes, they were
which I think is
definitely
something
tight
to
huggers.
aspire to. But still,
Yeah.
at 87 years old, you can still just grab someone and squeeze them so tight with so much love
Yes. Yes,
that they
definitely.
can never escape.
But be protected from anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that, yeah. And so I think it's been really fun to do this. I mean, after watching, I mean, I have not watched all
Okay.
99 previous Where I'm From videos that
I
you've
think
done.
only I have watched
You
all 99.
have watched all 99.
I lived
Yes.
them.
You live them all. But having experienced, every week, every week at least one
Yeah.
for how long has it been?
Not quite 2 years.
Almost
I mean, like
almost 2
20
years.
months,
And it's
21
been a big
months.
part. And I think it's opened a lot of interesting avenues and doors in your life.
Mm.
And I was, I wondered, as you started to get going and I hadn't participated, I was like, well, will I do one? And it seemed to make sense to just wait as the higher numbers got higher and higher for 100. And I'm glad that I could get it together and write the poem and be here for your big 100th episode or video or whatever this is called.
100th poem. Hooray. I'm glad you were on deck early on if I needed somebody, which I appreciated.
Yes.
And the response was so lovely and surprising that I didn't need anyone to step up because people volunteered so quickly and I was really overwhelmed with the response and continue to be overwhelmed with the response.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the fact that it's nice to be heard.
It's nice to be heard. And I think that the idea is like, we don't really have a lot of connection with poetry,
Yeah.
in like everyday life, like today, like and generally in our lives. And I think it's cool that you can have a prompt. So it gives you a little bit of
for
like
sure.
freedom, not to feel too like, oh, wow, I got to start from scratch with this thing. And to be able to do that, and anyone can participate. Everyone is from somewhere and everyone is from something. And so everyone can write and participate. It's a pretty exciting and awesome experience. And I'm really excited for all the great responses you've gotten.
Me too.
From this.
And thank you to George Owl Lion for her continued support of this project and for joining me a year ago. And it means the world to me. And to Fred First, who created this prompt, who I don't personally know, but I'm very grateful to. So next week with another poem. Thank you to everyone who's been a part of it. And if you are interested in sharing your own poem, DM me, email me. I'd love to hear it. So thank you, Cody, for being number 100. I love you.
It was a pleasure.